Jean-Paul Sartre and Daniel Kahneman's work are very, very different. So they have very different tones, themes, views, goals, but not all of their work is completely different. In this presentation, Sean and I are going to try and highlight some of these underlying connections between the two thinkers.
Kahneman's illusion of understanding applies to Sartre's work in various ways. In his work, Kahneman credits the misuse of the word know for fostering this illusion. He states that people often claim they know or knew of things simply because there are false narratives arranged in an intuitive and easily digestible manner, and attributes our blind acceptance of these narratives to our unlimited ability to ignore our ignorance. He argues that the word know should be used only when what was known was true and can be shown to be true. Sartre seems to agree with these sentiments, and confirms his agreement by analyzing one of his students' unusual predicaments. This particular student was faced with a tough choice: either care for his sickly mother and neglect his duty to serve, or fight for his country but abandon his mother in the process. Unable to reach a decision, the student declared that he would choose whichever option felt more appropriate, but Sartre disagreed with this response. Given that his student had never experienced the outcomes of either decision, Sartre argued he could never truly know how each decision would feel after the fact. In regards to his student's affection for his mother, Sartre states, "The only way to determine the value of this affection is, precisely, to perform an act which confirms and defines it." Without performing an act which confirms the feeling of either option, Sartre's student would have no way of truly showing that his premonitions are valid. Thus, both Kahneman and Sartre would seemingly argue there is no way Sartre's student could possibly know which decision is superior. The idea that one cannot truly know something without ample evidence is reiterated throughout both authors' works. When discussing the Russian Revolution, Sartre writes, "I can't swear that this will inevitably lead to the triumph of the nation. I've got to limit myself to what I can see." Similarly, Kahneman denounces those who claim they knew the 2008 financial crisis would occur before it happened. In both instances, the outcome of the event can neither be true or shown to be true prior to its occurrence, and thus, to use the word know in regards to its outcome would be an exploitation of the word and its meaning. Furthermore, Sartre seems to confirm the existence of the hindsight bias described in Kahneman's text. In Kahneman's words, when an unpredicted event occurs, we immediately adjust our view of the world to accommodate the surprise, and our tendency to neglect the views held before this accommodation occurs is what commonly leads to hindsight bias. As a result of this bias, people often believe their views were consistent with the outcome of an event, even if this was not actually the case. Similarly, when discussing the predicament of his student, Sartre asks his readers, "Who can decide a priori? Nobody." Given that a priori relates to knowledge that is inherently known and not deduced from experience, Sartre's assertion seems to back Kahneman's theory of hindsight bias. If one cannot know things without experience, then one cannot claim that they knew something all along. In a world devoid of a priori, these claims are inaccurate and come as a direct result of the hindsight bias. Furthermore, in reference to those suffering from this bias, Kahneman claims that a general limitation of the human mind is its imperfect ability to reconstruct past states of knowledge or beliefs that have changed. He cites a study in which individuals were surveyed both before and after President Nixon's diplomatic initiatives, and following this event, most believed they had assigned the highest probability of occurrence to whichever outcome actually occurred. They were unable to distinguish their initial beliefs from their biased understanding of the events. Sartre confirms this possibility, stating, "A mock feeling and a true feeling are almost indistinguishable." For those that suffer from hindsight bias, the false beliefs they form after an event occurs are indistinguishable from whatever beliefs they previously held. Ultimately, they will deceive themselves into believing they had predicted the outcome of an event all along, giving themselves and others more credit than they truly deserve.
So at this point, it's pretty clear that these two share a lot of ideas, but as I mentioned earlier, their theories don't agree on everything. So one place where they veer is in relation to responsibility for your life, or in Sartre's case, your existence. So in chapter 19 of Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, he talks about how we feel that our choices are more important than they actually are when it comes to the outcome. So he gives this example of CEOs and major companies. He says that if you had two identical companies, one with a good CEO and one with a bad CEO, the correlation coefficient between the CEO's and the company's future performance is only about 30%. So in a perfect world, that would be 100%, which just means that the good CEO would always outperform the bad CEO. But in a completely random situation, it would be a 50-50 split between who outperformed who. So this study shows that it's actually more of a 60-40 between the good and the bad. This is really low. The good CEO only wins 10% more than if it was completely random. This is all to explain that our choices aren't the only thing that leads to outcome. Kahneman is saying that there are so many other factors other than just our decisions that go into it. For example, other companies, the economy, the location of the business, pretty much any factor that is out of our control. This is in direct contrast to what Sartre says. So, to be clear about the context, he's talking on a much more theoretical plane, talking about his own meaning and existence, but I think it can still be applied the same way. So, Sartre thinks man is nothing else but what he makes of himself, meaning that you are responsible for yourself and your own success. He also says that we should make everyone fully aware that their own existence rests on them. Kahneman would say that Sartre is forgetting about how chaotic, unpredictable, and not black and white the world really is, and that there's a lot more to life than our own decisions, a lot of which we don't control. So with works like these, it can be really easy to get kind of lost. Sartre specifically can often be a pretty overwhelming read. I think it's really important that we ground these theories in our real lives so we can actually make proper use of them. I think these ideas all come back to evaluating the way we interact with and think about the world around us. Sartre and Kahneman both want us to make sure to evaluate our own biases and, along with understanding what we know, try and be open to understanding what we don't know we don't know. Or, if you just skim Sartre, just denounce life as meaningless.